So I'm curious as we start to wrap up here, to get your thoughts on the type of work that's happening right now with Movement for Black Lives and other organizations. And Reverend Barber talks about trying to inaugurate a third Reconstruction period. You know, the first being the Reconstruction period after the Civil War, the second one being the Civil Rights era, and that this is now sort of a third Reconstruction period. I'm sort of curious to get your thoughts on what you see as the parallels between this era and the era in which you were doing your work with SNCC in, and sort of what advice you have for activists that are doing work now, or young people that are living through this current moment that we're living through.
Yeah, I think, I'm very encouraged, first of all, by the young activists. And this is of every stripe: Movement for Black Lives, the Dreamers, all of, everybody is understanding the importance of everybody, meaning these young activists are understanding the importance of doing something, of changing things. And they are understanding the systemic nature of it, which is really great. So they understand it's not an individual, cop, that you have to get into the police department itself and the culture and those regulations and make sure that there are prices to be paid when an individual cop does things. So, immunity, all of those things, the unions, the police unions, all of those, they understand now the they're working on trying to deal with the systemic bases of white supremacy, basically. And so, that's really encouraging. And I think they also are getting more into the organizing part and not just doing the mobilizing and the marches, and which are important. I mean, you need to be able to do that too. But I think the long-term organizing is what we understood was going to really be most effective. And also that I think they're also more talking with local communities as opposed to just kind of doing their own mobilizing and marching and whatever, that you really do need to listen to the folks who live in those communities. When I mentioned Amzie Moore and that Bob is taking his signal, his direction from the local people in those communities, that's, I think, really important. You really are listening. You're not just going in with an agenda. You're asking, what is important to you? What do you want us to organize around? And you're living there. You're in that community. You're not you're not parachuting in, kind of. So I think the systemic nature, the fact that they're hopefully in it for the long haul. I don't think when we were 19 and 20 years old, we understood how long this was all going to take, and still so much that is not yet done. I'm in my 70s, and the people that I'm working with, who are working with all these young people, they're in their 70s, some in their 80s. The point is that we were taught and guided and guarded by older activists, older organizers who understood that they might not see the change they were working for in their lifetime, right? So Amzie Moore, yeah, he's working along, CC Bryant, they're working along, Miss Hamer, they're working, but they may not see the change. They may see a little bit of the change, but they're not going to see all the change. But the point is that if you do nothing, nothing changes, right? And so even when I remember when we were doing the interview with E.D. Nixon, who was the one who taps Dr. King to be the leader of the bus boycott. So we're talking 1955, right? 1956, 1955, 56. And what, E.D. Nixon says to us when we're doing the interview is, initially, because he was a longtime organizer in Montgomery before Dr. King gets there. And he said, originally, I was just doing this for the kids who were coming behind me. so they wouldn't have to suffer the same kind of stuff I was, going through. And then he said, and then at a certain point, I decided, shoot, I want to enjoy some of this stuff myself. So, but in his mind, as was in the mind of most of the folks who helped us understand this, was the idea that you might not see it, but if you do nothing, nothing changes for the better, right? And also that you have to do local. It's what the right wing way back when understood, which was, we're going to get the school boards. We're going to make sure that, like, as Texas now is saying, you're not going to teach anything that is the truth. You're not going to teach how the state was formed, that was formed by slave owners. You're not going to teach any of that. And if you do, you're going to lose your job, right? So they get the school boards, they get the local police offices, they get the judgeships, the local judgeships, they get the district attorneys, they understood, the right wing understood, it's not just up here, it's the local stuff. And it's what, and at one point, the Tea Party actually said, we learned this from the civil rights movement, because that's how we operated. People understand the things that they can see. Now, they may not see the congressperson who's living up in DC, but they do understand the mayor, and they understand the city council, and they understand what is being taught to their children in the schools. And so you start locally. And, now people are understanding, well, what Keith Ellison did in terms of getting, that white policeman Chauvin behind bars. Keith Ellison won because people elected him as a district attorney. And the reason that this white policeman is now in jail for the murder of George Floyd is not just because people saw it on the camera footage. I mean, they had seen many before that. They saw Staten Island and the man saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And he's being stomped on by 5 police officers in New York. And it's on footage from the phone, right? Because and it's because he was still selling singles of cigarettes, right? And he dies, right? Saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. Okay, that was Staten Island, New York. People saw that in footage. What changes is when you have people, first of all, it's cumulative. So by that time, people have seen a lot of this. But at a certain point, it also has to do with who are the elected officials that you have put in there, that you have voted in, that is going to make a change in your life. If Keith Ellison hadn't been there, I doubt that this would have come out the way it did, because he organized a team of attorneys to make sure that, to at least amass a prosecution that to accompany this footage that would get Chauvin in jail. It also meant that, you got Black people on juries now, and you can't be on a jury if you don't vote. So all of that is related to how do you get power? And no, it's not just around the vote, but you can't do it without the vote. What some in power did wrong during the 1960s is that they allowed us to see that when we organized together, we could actually make change for the better. And we saw some successes in that. If you don't do anything, there's nothing for the next generation to build on. And so you have an obligation to do what all those folks did before you, and you do see change, and you got to understand the small victories.
I think that's a really good place to sign off. It's been such an honor speaking with you. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your knowledge and your wisdom with our students.
Thank you so much. I've so enjoyed it. Thank you.